Greetings, Questers. Good evening. Let's see if I can actually do this whole thing. Trying to do a little stream, trying to talk to people, try not to be overly nervous, and try to just actually make this kind of natural. But it's nice to see everybody. Thank you for joining me. This is the first of what I hope to be quite a few, what I would like to call the Questline Tavern. And I really just kind of want to talk about Questline in a sense that helps people. This was going to act as a multifold way for me to kind of like discuss things with people, talk about features, be able to talk about maybe issues people are having, or even start building adventures and work together and see how that when you work with Questline on a more frequent basis, you kind of understand some of the things that we do, and it makes it easier for you to use. So that's kind of my hope, is to kind of like lead you through some of these little bits here and there, and hopefully that kind of turns out really well. And thank you very much, Grim. I appreciate it. I know that streaming can be a very what's the right word for that? Daunting task. And let's just kind of hop right into it. So my plan for the evening is to kind of go over some of the basics of, what Questline really does have to offer, in terms of just like, creating a game and setting up a map, and then, kind of running your session. And I've always found that a number of people ask this question whenever I'm trying to explain it, kind of do the elevator pitch. And people intuitively get a lot of the parts that Questline has. But I think that being able to have these tools and, the videos that I have posted over the years on YouTube, they can get outdated very quickly. As I'm constantly working on features and things pop up, you run into this kind of wall where, 2 years down the line, the video that you did that was a great video now no longer has all the details, and it's kind of, defunct. So I think part of this whole streaming series is that I'm hoping that I can build a better YouTube library for people to be able to see and be able to visit. And there's a lot to it, because it's hard. VTTs are hard. There's a lot to them, and what I don't want to do is build one that is going to be really overbearing. But hopefully, with a couple of videos, you can get through 90% of the things that you need. And let me see here. So, if we're talking about virtual tabletops in general, one of the things that I've always set out to do with Questline was to make a tool that, and I call it the Luddite, kind of syndrome, where people don't have the technical acumen to run a virtual tabletop. I want it to feel like a native-born application that people can truly just open up, and the things are there, and I can click some buttons, and I accomplish most of the tasks I need to do throughout my evening. It's one of the reasons why we're completely mobile friendly, and the tool is built around the idea that, play from anywhere on any device at any time. And that's a big part of it. So for people who don't know, what is a virtual tabletop? It's a way for you to be able to place tokens down on your table, your virtual table, that allows you to run a tabletop RPG from anywhere in the world with anyone, and really close the gap on distance and essentially time. A lot of people, as they tend to get older, have less time to be able to play their tabletop RPGs, and this becomes a real kind of hurdle for people. And there's amazing websites out there like Start Playing Games that has the ability to, let you find tables and be able to work with people and be able to find groups at remote distance. And I hope that we can kind of do the same thing with, just kind of building a better table. The idea of a VTT in general has spawned over many years a, a real kind of it's an interesting following because I've been a fan of the virtual tabletop software since really the beginning. I got started back in the very early days with map tools, and I loved map tools because it was very customizable and I could do all kinds of stuff. But the setup was a lot, and it really made me want to build something, even from those days, something that was simpler and easier to use. And as web technologies continued to advance, it became easier to publish and build a website that could kind of do all the things. They're essentially called progressive web apps. And that's what Questline is. It's a web app that is built around the idea that you can pretty much deploy it on any mobile device, any device that has a web browser. And yes, in fact, this will even work on like a Samsung TV. I've tried it. It's pretty interesting. However, don't try it on a Kindle. Kindle's not so good. It does not work very well on a Kindle. The virtual tabletop scene kind of exploded, I'd say probably about 10 years ago when Map Tools was kind of, the big player, and then Roll20 really kind of came out, and Fantasy Grounds had been around for a while too, and I had used their version. And I found that, both of which were pretty cumbersome for me in the kind of style of game that I like to play. And, I do love crunchy games where I get to play and roll dice and be a part of that. But at the end of the day, I want to spend more time like focused on my players and focused on the game that I'm playing, and, really less on the tool, because I feel like it should be more like the table that you're playing at. And that's always been my core philosophy with Questline, is like this idea of it really is just a digital table. It's not there to take over the shiny, math rocks for you. It's there to be something that is a tool. And at the end of the day, you can focus on your game, which is where all the adventure is to me. So what else is a VTT that can really be helpful? I have to excuse me while I go through some of my notes to make sure I'm kind of covering some of the things I really want to cover. The VTT in itself is really just a host of artwork, pictures, music, various, rendered pieces of pixels that really just give you the ability to place them anywhere on the map, to be able to move them around, to be able to adjust them and slide them, and measure distances. I mean, that's really the fundamental parts of any sort of VTT, is just being able to essentially, I have one thing here and I have one thing over here, and I want to be able to measure the distance between the two, because oftentimes those mechanics are how everything gets played out. And so that's really the core features of what most VTTs are trying to do. And I tried to build mine around the idea of, again, if you can't really click on it within a couple of steps, it's not, I try to go back essentially to the drawing board and be like, how can I make this better? How can I reduce the friction that people have? So I'll talk about Questline in general. Questline is broken down really kind of into major sections of the application. On the right-hand side, and you'll see as I move my mouse around, I'm just noticing you can't actually see my mouse. That's so sad. How do I make that happen? I can share my screen, but I cannot share my mouse. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I have to have it active. So when you're looking at the main body of Questline, well, let me take a step back, because I don't want to get ahead of what I'm trying to do here. The idea of the way Questline was, the way I built like the main page is when you create an account. So if I log out and I come to our landing page, which I love our landing page, I think it's actually quite nice. It does go through quite a lot of the details, shows you all of the active games that that I actively work on, that I try to support. Most of these are, I'd say 98% of these are all unofficial support. But once you're here, you just go sign up. You can sign up, you can create a new account, you can put in your emails and your passwords and all that kind of stuff. And then you can go right through to getting to your account and then getting to the home page. One moment while I see if I can't blur something. I'd like to actually. I will hide that for a minute. All right. So once you log in to the app in general, this is what we call the landing page or the home page. And on here is going to contain every game that you've ever made. You can create, it's unlimited. You can create as many as you want. You can also join as many as you want. The structure of Questline's pricing system is very simple. It is Game Masters. We do have annual subscriptions, but Game Masters pay $5 a month. Players pay $0. And if you activate a Game Master Plus account, you'll get some, extra bonus rewards. And mostly it's just a way to help essentially kind of mini crowdfund some of the development work that I do. So, you're going to get things like, token skins and things like that will add a little bit of extra. And it's mostly just there to offer a way for people to offer a little bit more support if they're looking to do so. But the homepage is quite simple in its regard. All your games are just meant to be here. You have things like the number of players in the game, whether or not you have new chat messages inside the game, that will be marked green. It will be grayed out otherwise. If you have messages that are directly to you, like somebody has tagged you in a text, it'll actually be, I believe it'll be red, so that you can see that you have messages for you. Now, when you go to create a game, you can simply do it by creating this, hitting Create New Game button. And this is only available to people who have an active Game Master subscription. And when you create a brand new account, you are automatically given a free 30 days. And it's an easy way for you to test out things going on. And like I said, if you want to subscribe, it's just a simple $5 a month or $50 a year. So when you come into the main create game, you can actually search, by any whatever you want, right? You could even filter out based off of things like, I want to do cyberpunk or fantasy or, whatever, kind of filters that you want to do. You can also create filters or favorites. So like I may want to favorite a specific one because they're the ones that I play the most. And it's pretty much easy. I can just click on that favorite icon and there it is. So from here, when you go to create a game, let's create a D&D 5th edition game. It's going to give you some basic information, and it'll give you some outlying information, and then it's going to tell you what's kind of essentially included. Now, this does say the D&D 5th edition 2014 rule set. However, it's a little bit of a misnomer. The 2024 and 2014 character sheets are almost identical, so they're pretty much interchangeable in Questline. So feel free to create any number of games that you want for 2024 and be able to input your data just fine. And then you're just going to give yourself a name. So let's do Questline Tavern. And, once it creates, it's going to immediately bring you to the game that you started. it will create a map for you. You can also click through our tips and tricks if you're looking to do some of that. Um, you can go ahead and ignore my debug text. I can turn that off too, so people don't have to worry about it. But that's just stuff that I use for my development stuff. There is this old tutorial on the map basics. This is a very old one. My hope with this whole like tavern experience is that I will be able to rebuild this entire map basics with a brand new one talking about how all this stuff works as I go through like, this stream. And when you're dumped into Questline, you're really kind of brought into, or I should say, when you're brought into your game, you have really 3 major sections that are important, and maybe 4 if you really kind of break it down a little bit more. The main one is the header, right? So the header is got your avatar. This is things where you have quick access to other games. If you play a lot of play-by-post games, this is a very useful way to switch between your games when you're in one. You can also get to your profile, and your profile has things like your avatar image, your username, game colors, and things like the dice colors that you have available to you, to include subscriptions, terms and conditions, all that kind of stuff. You can also always find the patch notes and the change logs here. We have change logs since the very beginning, and I update these every single time I do an update. So there's a lot of detail. Feel free to read. You can also submit bugs and feedback. This will come directly to my Discord server. So if you send me a message, I will be able to get it, and I can actually respond relatively quickly. But a key thing is, if you do want me to follow up with you, please leave me some contact info, because it's a hard thing for me to do if you don't. And then the help here is kind of our old help system. At some point, I've been working on a new tutorial system, which will replace this whole help section, which will be pretty cool. But this essentially just takes us to the YouTube channel. And from inside of the main game, you will have your chat area over here on the right. You will have your main menu here in the middle, and then you'll have your battle map area over here. And battle map is very interchangeable with what I would call scenes. And scenes can be anything you want them to be. Maybe it's a map, maybe it's a landing page, maybe it's just a visual image and a cue for people to see. These are all things that make it really kind of the immersive experience that you want. And it's up to you how you want to do it. So and in the chat system itself is all baked down in here, with your active character is down here, and then things like your dice roller. And then as a game master, you also get this nifty little button called treasure, which allows you to distribute treasure into the chat system, and people can like claim it and do all kinds of stuff with that. It's a neat, nifty feature. There is a full search system. If you have things in your game, you can search, and it's a very easy way for you to find stuff that you're looking for. The slash key is the way to bring that up. You can also click on this, and it will let you pick and find what you're looking for. So rather than start all the way from scratch, I will open up a different game so that we at least have some stuff to look at, and we can kind of move on, so I can quickly move through some of this stuff. And the other thing too, I'll go ahead and enable some audio. You guys should get some little background music here. So when you are creating your first game, you can test out the chat system, you can create a new map. And when you create a new map, one of the things you can do, I will use an existing. We change to a new map so that we can kind of see it. And so here, I have an empty map, right? There's just a base layer, and you can get to the map settings here from the map settings down in the bottom right. And when you set this up, it's going to use the scale that is a part of your system. And you can set this up to say, my scale is 5 feet, right? Some games use 5 feet, 1 meter, 1.5 meters, whatever, 1 hex, 1 square, whatever you want. It's completely up to you. You can also change things like the distance calculation, like old school D&D, doubled every other square. So you want to be able to kind of set that up so that exists. Flat is the most common today, and then exact is things for like war games, like Warhammer, where I want to know I'm going to move 2.5 inches or something along those lines. So when you create your map and you're in this kind of like open, blank slate, you can drag any image, and any image being like a JPEG, a PNG, a WebP file. I highly recommend WebP. They are the most compressed in terms of like general format. They're very similar to a JPEG, but they also allow transparency. And so you can get some really great coverage in images and not have a really heavy image sitting on your desktop or on your map. So it's very simple for you to take any image from, your web browser, from your file system or whatever, and drag it right onto here. Now I have a bunch of assets that I've already added to the asset gallery. I need to turn down the music just a tad. Here we go. And when you're doing this, it makes it very simple. When you upload stuff to your asset gallery, or you just upload in general, everything gets added to your asset gallery. And then from your asset gallery, you can simply drag there as well. So let's go find us a nice little map here. And we can find, let's see, maybe something. Do I have any animated ones? I don't. Give me one moment and I will find us a good animated map. So animated maps come in WebM format, and often MP4s. I'd highly recommend the WebM format, similar to the WebP format. It's just a better compression, smaller size, and it does the same job. Now, a lot of the maps that I use are from Che and Peku, and I love their artwork. Their artwork is superb, and they have so many wonderful maps to choose from. And this isn't an actual animated map, but I will drag this here anyway because this is such a cool map. And you'll see, I dragged it, and immediately it uploaded it. And even if I were to go in here, I could go find where that new map dropped. So here it is. This is the Haunted Dockside Tavern. And, I can click on this and it'll show me a preview as well. But now that I have the map in here, a lot of times when people are setting up a really basic map, this is all you got to do. Just drag an image and you're done. But you don't need to do much more than that. And hello, Rage Mage. And we hope that, a lot of people will be able to just take a couple of images, drag them onto, Questline, and then drop some tokens and start going from there. So what I like to do is I generally like to start with just find myself a map, something that's kind of in the general theme of what I'm looking for. Sometimes I can find the perfect map and I don't need anything else. And then you just come right here and just deactivate the edit mode. Now, the battle map system works on an idea that you're either editing the map or you're actively playing the map. And when you're editing the map, it's meant to give you extra tools so that you can drag objects around and you can add and modify things, and you can do a lot of things that will give you a really nice tool set that offers everything from like rotating objects to customizing certain things, even dragging areas to define like maybe I want to change the color of a space, and I can paint a tool, I can use a circle and I can drag this out here. I've created this table and I can come in here, and maybe because I have it higher in the objects list, maybe I can actually take the color I actually used the base color there. Let me delete that. Use this. Let me change my fill color. Maybe I want to change it to like a green, right? So I'll change the color to green. Maybe I'll do the same thing. I'm going to drag that. But now what I can do is I can do some really cool, fun tricks to be like, maybe I want to make this table stand out. So I'm going to use the effects layer or the effects grouping. And here I can actually do things like use essentially Photoshop kind of like overlays. And I can change this. And now see, I've actually managed to change the color of the table to green. And these little small things are pretty small and minor, but you can actually modify your map pretty easily to kind of make things your own in your map. And, I can also hide it if I wanted to. The players won't be able to see this. You can, and a way to deal with, objects you don't actually want to see, you can create a new layer. Let's do this. So let's say hidden layer. And then I will go back to this. I'll go to my circle, change my layer to hidden. And then what I can do is, if I don't want to see those things, I'll go back to that. I got to actually re-enable it, so now I see it. And then I can actually hide the entire layer, and it will actually completely disappear, and no one gets to see that. And as a game master, I can still, activate this and deactivate this. This is a great way to do things like traps. Like I do this all the time. But as you can see, like with just a couple of minutes, I am able to set up a map and modify that map and adjust things and kind of make it somewhat my own. And again, one of the major pieces obviously is tokens, right? People want to be able to place their tokens on the map just as easily. And so that is absolutely viable. When you create your maps and you have your active map here, you can take any character that is in your character list and you can simply drag it right onto the map. There you go. And you'll notice that the map itself, like see how small the token is? Like, man, that's pretty small. Well, our grid system is set up so that it's a really simple, like I'm just going to set my token size and I'm going to just do it just like that. And I can turn on the grid. Now I can see the grid. I can enable snapping to grid. I can actually even change my line color to maybe be something a little bit more visible. And there you go. I now have an active working snapping grid. And again, that just took a couple of seconds. And these are, hey Quag. Thanks Quag. That's cool. I hope your game goes really well. I love, hearing people's games and people talking about them. And Aaron, I am so glad that you've been able to use it as a player. When I built Questline, the non-techie people like you who I've known for years were one of the people in my mind, because I know how difficult VTTs can really make people feel overwhelmed with buttons. I hope someday you get to run a game. I think it would be pretty easy for people to do, and I really would love to see that. With your maps and being able to modify the token sizes and whatever, and being able to adjust that stuff is, again, always going for the very simple idea of like, keep it simple, stupid. Don't overcomplicate these problems, because the GM should spend more time on their players than on the tool, like fighting with the tool. And so that kind of basic setup is, I have a map and I have some tokens. It's that straightforward. And probably the second most common thing people are going to use on the map will be a fog of war. And it's, again, there's a tool over here called Fog of War. You can simply bring it up. I can, zoom my map out way far and take a look at what I'm going to look at. I can now enable the Fog of War. So it's going to give me a coat of everything over this. And then from here, it's just a matter of using these tools to draw some lines, right? You can use the rectangle tool, which is a very simple, I'm going to drag and let go, and bam, I have that. If I turn on the player view, this is what the players see, and it's very easy for me to kind of look at this. So when I'm using the polygon tool, I can do much more, dynamic fog of war that lets me see a little bit more. And when I'm doing this, like, you'll notice that I have the tool active and it's hard for me to move around. And if you're using a desktop, if you're using your computer, you can actually hold down the shift key and you can drag the map so that you can continue building your frame of the lines of your polygons. I'll continue doing this. I'm going to go only so far. I'll go back this way, and we'll go to, I guess, to this wall, and to here, and to this wall. And then to end it, what you really want to do is you want to come and you click on the starting point, and that will end the fog of war. And then I can close the tool, and now my fog of war is enabled. Now, this lets me as a player see exactly everything I want to see. This is the main room where everybody might be, and this is what the players can kind of generally see, and this is great. This is a great way to start your game. And, as the game master, you can obviously see everything else, and, and I can, maybe we put a Baylor over here. Not that the players really want to run into a Baylor this soon, but you'll see if I were to put like the Baylor over here and, kind of hide him. You can see the beginning of his health bar here. And so from a player's perspective, they'll actually see a little bit of that. And now I can put my mouse over this because I'm the game master. But the players, when they mouse over this, they will not see anything. So they have no idea what's here. And this is a great way to kind of draw suspense for people. I've done this a couple of times where I have had, my maps, and I've had creatures, and I've done something a little nefarious where I've taken my creature and I've edged it just like right here, and you can also hold down the Alt key if you noticed. When I did that, I was actually able to make my creature move not in the map, not in the grid. I can actually arbitrarily move it anywhere I want if I hold down the Alt key. But you can do fun things like that where you're like, oh, maybe I want to do that, but I'm going to just edge it right, right here. And so the player might see something where that gives a little fun, moment of suspense where the players are like, oh, what's over here? And then they mouse over it and they're like, oh, I think there's a zombie over there. Fun stuff like that. It lets players explore the map in a virtual environment, because people are generally, when you're playing online, they have a tendency to kind of wander and meander on their own. And so if you give them opportunities like that with things like points of interest, put a point of interest, and you can say, I'm going to put this point of interest down, and when in the hidden layer, that's not where I want it. I'll drag that down here. And I'm going to move this back to the base layer. And with the point of interest, what you can do is you can actually, put in a description, and, maybe I'll change it to say a person of interest. And I can say, there is someone interesting here. So this kind of stuff is a really fun way to kind of expand your map into letting players explore the map a little bit. Because when they mouse over this, it will show them the point of interest. So these are cool little techniques and useful tools that people can have that really kind of give you these fun one-offs. And from there, that's like pretty much the basics of how does like a map work? How do I do that? And I've talked about the layer system a little bit and the objects in the layers. You can get as complex as you really want to. If you want to have 10, 20 layers, you can do that. I have, several maps where there's multiple layers and there's all kinds of stuff and hidden traps and stuff that let people really kind of navigate as they move around the map, I can really quickly and unhide things and show off like there's something really cool over here. So, and to include using things like text and stuff to really kind of like bring out the map. Um, so yeah, maps. There's a lot to maps, and it's very straightforward. I hope that people can see that and that they can manipulate the map to their liking very quickly, um, and getting used to using the tools on the map. Things like the focus tool. This is a great tool that I added a while back. You can use this, and anywhere you click on the map, every player will be focused to that position and the same zoom level that you see right here. So if I zoom my map way in and I bring the Baylor right here, I could actually use this and focus, and everyone will get focused on the center of the Baylor. That's a really cool way to like bring people's attention to spots on the map. You can also use the ping tool, which if you hold the mouse down for 2 seconds, it will ping the map with your color, which is up in your profile. You can modify that here, and I can change my game color, and that will modify my ping color. So that's a customizable thing. Excuse me, my nose itches. But like I said, you have access to things like, trackers, which are ways to, track rounds and things like that. If you really want to, clocks for blades in the dark, that kind of stuff. Points of interest, text, your fog of war, your grid, your paint tool, which I've showed off, your measurement tools, which is just a way for you to, quickly do, like, I just want to do a line measurement from here to here. I'm done. Like, I literally just clicked from here, and then I essentially double clicked at the end. So when I delete this, I can try it again. And so I can say I want to measure from here, and I will click here because I can actually create like waypoints if I want to. But wherever you are, if you click in the same spot twice, it will end that, and then you can actually see the full length. So that's measurement tools. You have radius and arcs and stuff like that. And then recenter. If you're ever lost on the map, the recenter will bring you. So I'll go way far off the map, and I hit recenter. It will bring me back to the center of the map. And specifically, if you are a player and you have a token, or if you have an active character, it should bring you back to the center of your token on the map. So that's a helpful little tool. And then the toggles. The toggle system is a really kind of like quick way for you as a player. This is you specifically as a player or a user. When you click these things, it does not affect other players. You can toggle the map title. This is a GM tool, so this is only visible to you. The token labels, I can turn them off if you don't want to see them. I can turn off the progress bars. I can also turn off the floating numbers. This is like if your character takes damage. If you have a hit point like component that's inside of your character sheet, it will actually show you the damage, the number of damage taken, or the number of damage healed, or that kind of stuff. It will actually like put damage numbers over your character as a fun little thing, so you can turn those off too. The token pointers, technically all tokens have facing pointers, and depending on the skin for the token, I can hold the F key and I can use this tool called token facing, and it will rotate my facing. So this is a really useful tool if you actually enjoy facing in games, that kind of stuff. It's a really simple tool. You can also access it from here, set facing, and you can just take it and point it. But you can also turn them off if you don't like them. And then finally, the movement lines. You'll have seen in a number of places, I have these things called movement lines. Now, the reason for them is something that I like to call asynchronous play, which is play by post. If somebody's playing a play-by-post game, oftentimes they'll move their token and they'll log out or whatever. But this actually shows you their originating point and where they move to. And this works with waypoints as well. So if I take a character and I move it and I hit the space bar and I move it, my character is going to move and it will show me the waypoints and how my character got there. It's a really useful tool when you're playing a game that is not necessarily live. And even when you're playing live, it can be very helpful because you're like, that's exactly where I moved. If you don't like them, you can also turn them off. If you select your token, it will always show. But if you unselect it, that's when they hide if you don't have this on. So selecting your token will always show your last movement. And then if you're using a mobile device, so like if you're using an iPad or something, being able to add something to your map, this is the way you do it. You click on this little button down here and it will add it directly to the center of your view. And you'll be able to add images and items, videos, whatever you want to your map that way, instead of actually dragging an image onto your map. Obviously, the map settings is the whole toolbar here on the left. You can select tokens from here. You can select this. If you double click a token, it will focus on that token. And then you can also do what's called add selected to encounter. And this tool is built around your whole encounter system. So if you use the shift key, I can select multiple tokens, and this will let me actually use that, and it will add all of my selected tokens to this encounter. And that's a very quick way to do this. A feature that just got added that will come up in the next update is that if you don't have anything selected, when you click on this will be available, and it will add all of the tokens. It will ask you if you wish to add every token on the map to the encounter. So you don't even have to select anything. You just click it, and everything will get added. That's a new shortcut. Let's see here. Let me see what else. So that's a lot. It's not a small amount. There's a lot to like maps. And I'm just trying to cover the overall theme of all the tools of how maps work, and what you can do and how easily you can manipulate it. And again, it's built around the idea of trying to give you powerful tools, but keeping it simple. There's more to come. I have a lot of features I'd love to add. I recently spoke at Grimwood Games' YouTube channel, and we talked at length about some of the things that I want to work on, and dynamic lighting and dynamic vision and other things like that for the maps is a higher priority item for me, like walls, that kind of stuff. So I think it's really important to give people some really cool tools that make it again powerful without overburdening people with too much. There's a lot of buttons in Questline, and what I want to do is make them less, so that it's easier to kind of follow. Let me see. Let's talk about. So that's, I've talked about getting started, setting up your map, kind of, looking at your characters, and there's a big thing that has probably been mostly unnoticed so far, and maybe some people pick up on it. You haven't had to install a single thing. There's no patches to update. There's no networking. There's nothing. You just went to a website and everything works, and it works smoothly, and it's easy to use. Like it, it's a sales pitch right there. Like I promise you, it's easy to use. Like you use it a few times and you will understand everything you need to know. So let's kind of set up a little adventure here, right? I want to kind of build out the idea of this little tavern here. So when I'm building stuff in Questline, oftentimes when I'm prepping for sessions, I will come into Questline and I will look at the map, or I will look at a scene and really try to understand what I'm trying to do. And I'll use D&D as the basic example because it's very familiar to me and it's easy to use. If I were to do like a true, let me think about how this is. if you were to come into a tavern, let's say, and you were to start off a brand new set of adventurers, and maybe this dockside tavern is part of the Kingdom of Nolde, which is part of one of the settings that I've built over the many years. I have a setting that I call the Nether March, which is kind of like a mixture between like the Dark Crystal and the Underdark, um, based in my own custom world, in my own custom setting. And the idea is there was a cataclysm on the top of the planet, and everybody had to flee to go below the surface. And when they ended up in the Nether March, they, were fraught with innumerable dangers, and they had to eke out a living among these like cavernous reaches. But the cavernous reaches were almost like Journey to the Center of the Earth. They were like these massive, sweeping plains, like mushroom plains and crystal geodes and all kinds of, very interesting locations. And so I have this whole setting, and Nolde is this port city that runs. So there's a river that runs right down the center of the Nether March, which bisects it from the northwest corner all the way to the southeast corner. And the Gray Sweep is kind of like in the United States, there's a river called the Mississippi. The Mississippi is one of the biggest rivers in the world, and it's kind of like that. It's this big, massive, massive river, and boats go up and down and ferries all the time, and they traverse up and down the Gray Sweep all the time. Nolde is this centralized kind of like Freeport city that exists in the center of what is the kind of like the kingdoms of Nethermarch. The Nethermarch is broken down into 7 kingdoms, and the 7 kingdoms have their own aristocracy or meritocracy, and so they have all these different kind of evolving groups. And Nolde they're famous for all the trade that they do across all the Nethermarch. They're the sea captains and the ship bearers and the tradesmen, and the entire city is based off of a meritocracy. And there's this council that exists inside of Nolde, and they kind of run the day-to-day business, and they manage all the people, all the ships, and all the trade that comes in and out, and they help broker a lot of deals between the other kingdoms. Now, inside of Nolde, because of the expansive dock system, there's taverns everywhere. There's all kinds of taverns that go up and down these docks, and we could start off there as this kind of basis for an adventure. So, coming up with a basic idea. Let me take a drink of something here. Talking quite a lot, and it's really interesting. Rage Mage, I don't know how you do it. I really don't. It's a hard skill, man. So when I'm trying to build something, oftentimes I like to, I come up with this kind of basic idea of what I want to do and run for a game. And I have like, a basic inkling of where I want to start. And then from there, I will quite literally come into Questline and I will open up my journal system. It's a very robust tool. And I can show off a couple of examples of like, existing journals that are in here. But I will usually, let's see if we can find a new. All right, so let's just add a brand new item. So we're going to call this we'll call it Tavern of Nolde for the moment. I can make it private, and this privacy allows me to share it with other players and that kind of stuff. I'll set my theme. I'll hit save. But as soon as I do that, I will come over here and I'll do this pop out, and I will bring it right over here. And that's interesting. I love seeing bugs. that those lines should not exist. I don't know why it's there. We'll have to look into that. But that's how Questline is. As much as I love that there would be no bugs, there are sometimes bugs. Here, let me, maybe I'll change the theme. We'll go to myth. Nope. Well, that's interesting. Why does it show up? Ah, it's going to bother me so bad. All right, we'll just do it from here. But I will oftentimes, I will pop out the item and I will edit it right from here because it lets me resize this and I can work on it, pretty easily. And then I can actually open up multiple journal items and I can work through some of that. And especially if you have kind of a wider monitor, this is a great way where you can, essentially maximize Questline and you can kind of, collapse some of your things. I can bring my chat down, I can close this down, and then maybe I'll open up like, 2 or 3 different items. And this lets me kind of, work through some of my ideas, and I kind of do this side by side, and it lets me work at this. So when I set myself up, so let me close this down. And I will go back to my journal of the Tavern of Nolde. And so here, let's create a bit of an adventure. So often, I try to do something like, here's... I keep calling it Noodle or something. That's not how it is. Taverns of Nolde. And you can do things like headings. You can also use Markdown. So let me actually get rid of that text. And I can be like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And there you go. It's, just using Markdown as a really quick way to set up headers and that kind of stuff. It's a quick way. So maybe we'll do pound and introduction. These are too big. So, and you can also just come and change it. It's a, standard rich text editor. Make that a little smaller. Maybe I'll center this on the page. And now we can, begin kind of our adventure. And we can say introduction. The players have entered the city of Nolde, which resides on the Gray Sweep. They find themselves within, I don't know, what do we want to call the tavern? Anybody got any ideas? Give me some ideas for the name of the tavern. They find themselves within the name and are looking to join the Adventurers Guild. And seek their glory looking to join the Adventurers Guild, seeking glory and fame. So let's talk about like some of the structure of a basic story, right? Obviously, you want to have essentially a beginning, a middle, and an end. And with the journal system, this lets me kind of like build all kinds of different pieces where I can kind of have an introduction. Maybe I can do a background. I will change this and I will change this to the same like heading. And then in the background, I can go into some details here. But what I can do now is I can actually say like part 1. And in part 1, I can, list a very short synopsis of maybe something that's going to happen. The players get acquainted in the tavern. players get acquainted in the tavern. But what I can do from here is now I can actually take my setup in my Tavern of Nolde, or maybe we want to change the actual name, so the Taverns of Nolde, and maybe I'll create a child. And this is where you can start nesting your journal entries. And I can say, okay, I'm going to create a new journal entry, and I'm going to call this one part 1, right? And so this is going to be my new one. And you'll see that it nests itself nicely underneath there. And then I can actually start to create individual parts of this without having to overfill like an actual journal entry. But on top of that, I can also do things like linking, and I can say I want to, I can tag like characters, or I can tag stories. There it is. So if you use the caret key, I can actually say part 1, and it'll actually build me a link to this right inside of here. And then, I can actually click on it and it will show it to me. So you can actually do a lot of really fun things where if you want to say, like, maybe you want to have some sort of like custom rule that exists and you want players to be able to quickly find it, you can just link it inside of one journal and then link it. And when you click on it, so if I go into here, I can say testing and save that. Go back to Taverns of Nolde, and when I click on this, you'll see that it shows up inside of the nested kind of view. And so this is a really good way to kind of start to break down your stories into these really nice, unique journal entries. And if I truly wanted to, like if I wanted to share this with the players, I can actually use this share to chat option. And this will get dumped to the chat, and whatever privacy settings exist on this entry here, you can go here and go to your settings. It's set to public, but whoever has access to it will be able to see this appropriate journal entry. So let's go back to the Taverns of Nolde. So I like to start off games with a really fun kind of like, let's jump right into it. I often find that's a great way to start games. It gives people something to really kind of latch onto. And it gets some of the awkwardness out of like the initial game. Obviously you probably want to do a session 0 with your players and say, hey, who wants to play what, and what are we going to try to do, and let's kind of come up with a basic idea of how we're going to play together, and let's set some ground rules so that we don't step on each other's toes, we don't embarrass people, we don't hurt people, and that's a real important part of getting your game going. But I always love to just dive right in, right? I've just the idea of like, you show up in a tavern and a fight breaks out. Now, me having been a bouncer in my life, I can tell you I don't need to fight any more tavern brawls, and I would prefer to just start my fights on paper. And so what I love to do is to kind of come up with a concept of like, okay, well, what is going to happen in this like tavern? Who's going to come in here? How is it going to break down? Is there going to be a fight? We could think about some of that stuff. So I'll get rid of that link. In part 1, the players get acquainted with the tavern as they take stock of the others present. They will immediately be set upon by a crazed, I think I like the idea where this is possibly going, a crazed sailor who has come in from the Gray Sweep and had his ship and crew pulled off the dock by a number of Sahuagin Hey, who doesn't like Sahuagins? They're great. So, and using this, one of the many features of Questline is, your character system. And, if I want to search for, I don't think I have any Sahuagins here. So what I can do real quick is I'm actually going to find on D&D Beyond. Give me one moment here. So you can use the Sahuagin, and I will show. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a picture here. So in D&D Beyond, they have their nice stat blocks. Give me a moment. A lot of little technical things, and it only takes me a second. So I'm going to take a picture of the stat block. And mostly because I just want to show something off that I think a lot of people don't really see a lot of. Let me save this. All right. And so what I'll do is I will go find that. I'm going to drag it right onto here. So here's the stat block for a Sahuagin, right? This is kind of a cool thing you can do. Like you can take a screenshot if you really wanted to, and you can place it off the side of the map. And you as the game master can see this if you really wanted to use it that way. One of the really fun things to do, though, is being able to import this. And on D&D Beyond, I can select I can copy the whole stat block, and I can come in and create a new character. And you guys get to see this nice little awesome preview of the new character sheets that are coming. And I can use this import tool. And what I can do is I have this D&D Beyond monster stat block. Now, this only works with the legacy monster stat blocks. I actually do have a fix that's going to be coming soon that's going to actually include the new stat block, so it should work just fine with that. But you'll see there's different importers, and I plan to expand the importers a lot. I'm hoping that I can get to there pretty soon. But you just come in and you just paste the text, right? And it's going to build all these lines of all the text and all the things. And it shows you an example so that you can see what it's looking for. But then I just hit import. And there's my entire stat block for my Sahuagin. So this right here to me is, kind of one of the unsung heroes of Questline, and its ability to quickly, jump into a game by saying, I just want to throw some characters together. So I don't need the Sahuagin stat block. Get rid of it. But now I have all of the characters' pieces here. I could go find a piece of artwork and, upload it. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe I'll grab the Sahuagin here. And what's fun is you could actually even take the image. I'm going to drag it straight from the D&D Beyond website, and I'm going to drop it onto the map, right? So bam, there, now I have it on my map. I can delete that too. But what's fun is now I did that, and it's inside of my asset gallery. And so I'll have to go search for it. So here it is. I can select it. I can now set the thumbnail. We'll give it a nice pretty picture of his face. And then I'll edit the frame style. This is another feature that I love about Questline, being able to set up these tokens. To me, this is chef's kiss right here. This is one of my favorite pieces, is being able to set up this stuff on the fly. I can do all kinds of special effects and do stuff. I can even change like the effect hue and maybe we'll change this to green. That looks really cool. I'll hit accept. I'm going to hit save. And now all I have to do is take my Sahuagin and drop him on my map. And bam, boom, I'm all set. So, and yes, I did use a technical term called bam, boom. So the way I love to set up my games is I will think of things like this as I go along. And I really am trying to... I try to lay down a lot of different things because it gives me this kind of sense of oh well, I've got this here and I've got that there, and the really cool part about building some of this stuff is that I can just throw it away if I don't really want it. I'm like, that doesn't really work. Yeah, no, maybe that doesn't work at all. But what is really interesting, because now I want to be able to, add this Sahu again, I want to add more. So I'm just going to hit Control C and Control V, and I have another one. Now I have 2 Sahuagins on my map. I'm going to select that one, do that again. And so I can just add a couple more, and you'll see it started with a regular Sahuagin and then 1 and 2, so it'll auto number on the fly. And I can actually even go back in here and change this guy's name to be like, he's actually Sahuagin 3. And then from there, if I hold the V key down, or I hit the V key and I select, it will select all the guys inside. And now, like I said before, I did not actually select them. Should have. Uh-oh. That's a bug. Oh, noes. More bugs. You gotta fix bugs. Always fixing bugs. I should sleep one of these days. But I can do the add selected to encounter. And you'll see over here, I'll actually, I'm going to reset this encounter so that it goes away. And from there, you can actually kind of get into, okay, well, now I have a character, and, I have these Sahuagins, and I'll hold down the Shift key, and then I can just use add selected to encounter, and it's actually going to roll dice for every single one of those. And my encounter is set up. And you can also, drag these and change the encounter order however you want. Remove guys if you really want to. And so there's a lot of that to, again, quickly kind of get yourself set up. And I'm just using a template of like a D&D game, so this is pretty easy to do. It's a very common, I think a lot of people know this really well, so it's pretty straightforward. And then, so we have a basic encounter, right? So a guy comes in, and, we interact with the players, and, maybe they, manage to get some information out, maybe using this character, maybe we want to roll a medicine check to, help the sailor and kind of calm him down. And again, of course, I roll a 4. That was pretty terrible. I blame you, Rage Mage. I blame you. It's all his fault when I roll low. The the way that we kind of quickly kind of roll through this stuff, it harkens back to the idea of just let's keep it, let's stop focusing on the virtual tabletop and focus on your game. I think that's the most important thing to always remember, and I try to keep that in mind when I'm even building encounters. I want to focus on the game and really kind of bring people to the table in a way that in a digital environment is so often overlooked, and the shiny bells and whistles of all the toys can often kind of be overbearing. At least that's my opinion. And I like games where I get to focus on my friends and enjoying the time I get to spend with them, because it's a pretty rare occurrence. I don't get to do it very often. I live a very busy life and have a lot of things to do. Let's see here. So let's talk about. Let me go back to my notes to understand other things. And so let's talk about some of the other little features that you can have as a game master, trying to run your game. When you are, when you're running your game and you have your tokens. Let's talk mostly about the encounter here. So when you kind of set up your encounter, and you have, you kind of get yourself going and you have your things, the first thing that you do is you actually want to because I did a reset, it's a little different. But the reality is you can do next character. And you'll see that my token here now has this little exclamation point, and the character on the map also has the exclamation point, and that's the current actor inside the encounter. And as a game master, if I hit next, it will shift to the next one, and it will actually even move to that character so that I can see it. But what you'll see is that players also have this little thing here. There's a bug in the tooltip that it doesn't show up above. But there's this little check mark here that players now have. That this has always been here, but players can click this and it will end their turn so that it's a way for the agency of players to exist. So the players, without even being prompted, can just be like, "I'm done," and they click their check mark and it moves on. And the next person can go without the game master having to prompt them to do it. I've found this is a very helpful tool when running my games. I find that the players will do this, like my group does this automatically now, and they even kind of tease each other sometimes, like, go find the check mark. And it's a really useful tool to just make the game a little smoother, a little faster, because I'm not directing when it goes from one player to the next, in the sense of, a player takes their actions and they should be able to say, "I'm done," and move on. And so if I hit the check mark, you'll see that it, moved to the Sahuagin, and it didn't move me because that's intentional. But you'll see that this Sahuagin here actually has, the actual active marker. And then from there, I can open the Sahuagin. I can also use the mini character sheet here. And the mini character sheet has all their actions, and so I can be like, oh, he's going to use his multi-attack. And so maybe I want to actually click that, and it posts that to the chat, and they can see, okay, multi-attack, and then I'm going to click the bite attack. So you'll see inside of the action system that I have an attack and damage roll automatically built in. Click roll, and then because multi-attack makes 2 melee attacks, one with his bite and one with his claw or spear, I can say he's going to use his claws. And so that right there, wow, this is some wonderful rolls. This is really like par for the course. I swear. It's like VTTs know that they're being shown off to people, and they're like, let's just roll a bunch of ones. So again, that makes it, again, simple and easy as a game master to be able to run my game quickly. Again, more focused on playing and talking to my players than I am like, where are my buttons? Like, what am I doing? It's just the way I prefer to manage all of it. But you can also go into the detail, right? I can open up the character sheet for the Suhugan number 2. I can move it around. Maybe I want to have both of them open and I can see them both at the same time. That's, these are obviously things that it's up to you. And what's really nice with the hit point system is that, if this one takes damage, I can just simply pop up the dialogue and be like, maybe he takes 6 points of damage. You'll see, like, there's the little damage numbers that I talked about earlier, and it reduced their hit points individually. And it's easy for me to track as a game master. There's also kind of a little mini view of it down here. I can see, their health. So in the encounter, I can kind of keep track of that. And then when a character eventually dies, if, I did another 16 points of damage to this one, their hit points go down to 0. You'll see that their token actually turns kind of a dark shade, but they're still there. And it doesn't mean that they're dead. It just means that they are potentially down, right? So it's kind of like an automated system there. But if you want to mark the token as dead, you use this little button right here called Mark Dead, and bam, there's a dead icon, and that you can clear, and you can see it down here in the encounter, and it makes it really easy to track, what's actually happening there. To include, you can also do things like conditions. I could be like, I'm going to add a condition. Maybe I want to add the dead condition here, but I don't really need to. But maybe this one was charmed, and so the charmed condition pops up, and you can see, if I move the token over a little bit, you see this little icon, and there's the charmed icon, and the players can actually the people that have access to this token can see the conditions. You can also see the conditions down here, and you can mouse over them and they tell you all the details. Mouse over here tells you kind of a short bit of detail. But this is, little tools that kind of like help speed up your gameplay and things so that you can very quickly kind of see what you're looking at. All right. What else do we want to talk about here? So we were talking about, and again, this is the idea behind this stream is really just trying to talk about a lot of the parts of Questline. So that if somebody wants to sit through, I mean, obviously it'll be a long stream to walk through, but this will probably help you get yourself set up in a way that is really like, here's the bare bones of like getting yourself set up and some of the basic concepts of the tool and how to do that. And it really kind of dives into like the nuts and bolts of like getting yourself to be able to run a game. And that's my main focus for this stream. Further streams, I want to talk about like, I would love to work with people, building an adventure, like actually like really coming up with an idea and like building a whole map and like from ground to like fully running, and then even potentially inviting people in the stream in to come in and run through an adventure, like not an adventure, but like maybe like a little session or a combat. And so that would be a lot of fun to be able to do. Let's see here. See some of the other things for notes. One of the other big pieces that Questline, one of the fundamental pieces of the way I designed Questline was to have what I call the action system. And the action system, I think, is probably one of the most powerful pieces of the tool, hands down, because it lets you without any like macros or any sort of like slash commands or anything like that. I can literally build pretty much any sort of complicated dice roll in a very short period of time that lets me run my games. Again, this is about reducing the friction to run your game. And if I build, all of my actions inside of here and they're all my spells, maybe they're all my cantrips, maybe whatever, and I can build them all straight up to provide them to the players, the players can come in and import these, not import, but they can add these prefab actions to their character sheets, and they don't have to do a lot of setup. And it makes it a lot simpler for people to be able to just jump in and play the game, especially, people who are not tech savvy. I think that is probably one of the most important parts of it, is like the non-tech savvy people don't have to do a lot. They can jump in, their character sheets work, they can use their phone to, manipulate their character sheets, they can roll their dice from their phone, and they can just, you don't need a big laptop to play the game. Like, you just need a webcam, something that can, do your connection and get everybody on the same page, and then you just use your phone to play the game. You don't need a beefy laptop. So let's go into kind of like some of the details of how the action system works. So I'll show the bite action here. And when you build a prefab, there's an extra tab here called privacy, which lets me set this up so that players can see this in a certain way. I can make it private or public, or I can let specific people see it. And this right here, this view of the privacy tab, is actually how I plan on putting the privacy essentially for the rest of the application. This is kind of I had redesigned some of this stuff, and I did it when I did it here. And so the rest of the application is going to get a very similar view when you're dealing with privacy. It's going to have like its own tab. It's going to be much more like visible and easy to see. Right now, it's just kind of in a little drop down that's a little hard to read. But when you're setting up an action, let's create something from scratch here. So, I guess maybe we do have Fireball, so that kind of ruins the idea of using that. Maybe we'll do something like, We'll do a mace. So we're going to make a mace attack. We'll just call it mace. And you can give it a category, like, so you can give it a group 1 and group 2. And what that does is it lets me set where it goes inside of this list. Where did our mace go? There it is. So maybe we'll do not under spells, not under tables. All right, so we're just going to do this, and we're going to set it to weapon melee. So we'll do that, and we'll set our privacy up. We're going to make it public. I'm just going to save that. And so now it's down under weapon melee. All right. So when we have our tabs here, right, we have effects and our details. And our detail is things like, is there an image for it? Do we have a description for it? Standard mace attack. And this text will pop up here, and maybe I want to set up, I can add options. So I can be like, I'm going to add a range. And so this is going to be 5 foot. And then I want to add in a action type. I want to say a melee attack. Now this is specific to D20 systems. These options are available. And you'll see, and it pops up here on the action, gives you a preview of what you're actually seeing. And then from here, when I'm setting up my actual effects, my effects are the different dice rolls that I have, right? So in this case, I'm going to have an attack. It's a D20, and I'm going to say I'm not going to have any natural bonus, but what I am going to do is I'm going to go to my options, and I'm going to say I'm going to use critical because it's going to trigger on a 20. I'm going to set up an ability score because my strength adds to the value. And then I'm also going to add my proficiency, and I'm going to use my full proficiency. So here it'll be a 1d20 plus my proficiency plus my strength, and so that's what it is. And whenever you're previewing this information here, it's whoever your active character is down here. And so then I have my attack. Now I'm going to add an effect, and I'm going to add a damage. And so, this is probably a 1d6 or maybe a 1d8. We will want to do something similar with the toggles, with the options. And I'm going to say I want a damage type. I want to set up my critical target, and I'll explain that here in a second. And then I also want to set up my ability score because my strength is going to modify my total damage. My damage type is going to be bludgeoning. And then I'm going to set up my my critical target. The way this works is when you are setting up an attack, like in D&D 5th edition, your attack, if you have the toggled option of critical turned on, whenever your value in the die is, this number or higher, the threshold, and you can, if you see these little tool tips, I highly recommend that you preview them because it will tell you a lot of detail about the thing that you're looking at. So this value is the threshold, so 20 or higher, and it will add this value, or sorry, it will not add this value. If the threshold is met, it will then trigger the very next effect in the tabs in the next chain. The next one that has this toggle turned on will be triggered. And what this will do, this sets the effect to receive the critical boost. And when the 20 rolls, the damage will then double the dice based on that result, right? This is how you set up your this is how you set up your kind of like your basic attacks in D&D 5th edition. And so you'll see the whole preview down here, a standard mace attack, it's 5 foot reach, the action is a melee attack, and it shows my attack is 1d20 with my proficiency and strength, and my totals, and then my damage and my strength, so it's 1d8 plus 2 bludgeoning. I can't remember if it's a d6 or a d8. Doesn't really matter. And then when I save this, this is now available to everyone in the application or in my game. And this is a really cool way to set up like these prefab actions. And so many people can get a lot of use out of this, because from here, as a character, if I go to any character that I have, I can come in here and I can quite literally say, like, maybe I do this null, right? Maybe I'm going to add this. And I go down to the actions section. I say add prefab. I can type in mace, click it and select it. And now it's added that mace to his specific character sheet. Doesn't change the one that was in the prefabs, but he now has his own copy of it. And you'll see, based on his strength and all his profs and all those things, it actually adjusted the values accordingly. And, if I change his strength to, 12 and he gets a +1, and, maybe his prof is a +1, now I get to see that he has a 1d20 +2 and a 1d8 +1, but bludgeoning. And this makes it much simpler for you to manage your characters. And rather than like making individual actions for every single character, you can make more group-centric actions that are things like, here's all the spells and here's all this. And you can get quite a number of these actions that are pre-generated. I believe Rage Mage has created quite a number of them. In our Discord server, you can find we have a channel that people share data, because you can actually export characters, you can export actions, and so you can import those actions into your game, and it makes it a lot easier, because then you can be like, oh, here's a bunch of the spells for D&D, and so if people are offering to share that stuff with each other, that's a great way to help the community. Now you can see, the action system is really built around the idea of, again, it's reducing that little bit of friction. And surprisingly enough, setting this up so now all I ever have to do to make my melee attack with my mace, I can click this button, and when I pop this up, if there's any consequential like bonuses, because the GM's like, hey, you get a bonus +1 for whatever, I can click the +1 and hit roll. It's so straightforward to be able to modify these things on the fly that it works great. And now when I go back, that bonus is gone now, because this was a temporary, modifier to my next roll. The same thing goes with advantage. I can say I have advantage, and now when I roll, it's going to appropriately roll with advantage, and give me my totals and tell me I have advantage. And all these things, like the action system, I truly feel is one of the best parts about Questline, because it lets me essentially pre-build rolls and dice, so that when I'm typically playing a game and I pull out my dice bag, and I love to roll my dice on the table, I don't have to be like, I need to count my dice out, I need to do this. Like, it's the idea of, because you're playing in a digital format, we can often get stuck in this place where we're trying to play with each other, but we're distracted a lot of times, because we're playing on a computer, and that computer has a lot of things going on. I could have Facebook open. I could have, I could have so many different applications running that are distracting me from actually playing my game, that when I'm able to play, I can actually more focus again on the actual game and the tool, and not the tool. That it gives me this ability to be like, oh, I don't need to like go searching around in the application to go find all my rolls. Like I just have it here. I have one button. And then what's really great about that is I can actually take that and drag it down to my hotbar. And this, as a player, is probably one of the most useful pieces that you'll have. Now, I can take this, and as a game master, I can do this too. I dragged it from the null, and it will let me roll this attack as the null from my hotbar without having to change anything. And that makes it really dead simple for me to be able to run a game. And then the players have this ability, because maybe, I want to use my longbow attack as my elf. And again, it focuses more on interacting with our friends, in this virtual environment, rather than, the tool like being distracting because the tool requires me to type in some command, or I have to do something, or I'm searching through my character sheet. Like I want people to play their games their way and with less time and energy. Um, that's kind of like the crux of why I built Questline. Um, I really, truly want people to be able to find their friends online and play. Um, it's more important to me than I think people will probably ever really realize, to let people be able to play online together. Um, it's I want to be able to play with the people that I've enjoyed playing with for decades, and it's very hard. Um, when you're trying to do a lot of things, because you have to sacrifice, some of your time to play with your friends, especially as you get older and you potentially have kids. There's all those things add up to, 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there. By the end of the day, you're exhausted and you have no time for your friends. And I love playing games with friends. It's been a big part of my life, and I don't want to lose that. So I always felt that this tool was a way for me to kind of give back to people, to be able to do that again with reducing noise, so I don't have to drive an hour and a half to go find my friends and then play with them sitting at a table. As much as I love doing that, I don't have to go spend 3 hours driving just so that I can go spend 4 hours with them. But then that takes away 3+ hours from my family that I could have spent with them doing something, important with my family. And I feel like giving that back to the community is really important. Again, less time on this, this pretty tool, and more, just spending the time that you have with your friends. So let's see here. I'm pretty close to the end of the stream, and I want to give anybody that is still out there that is watching, or people that may have questions. I would love to hear from people if you have questions or something you want me to talk about. I do have a couple of people who have inspired me over the years to even start this stream. So please feel free to ask your questions in chat, and I will answer them and be happy to do so. You can also find us on Discord, and I'm very active on Discord all the time, and will answer questions, and I will jump into a chat with you if you need to understand something and don't really understand something or need help. Rage Mage is around a lot to help. Whiteheart is also around a lot to help. They are both fantastic friends, and they have done wonders for helping me try to imagine this. And along the same lines and side is, it goes without saying that my family and my wife have been a huge supporter of me being able to do this, and even me being able to step in to be able to do stuff like this stream is something that I'm trying to kind of dive into. Not because I think I'm going to be a great streamer, but because I want to show off Questline. I want people to see it, and I want to turn this into my full-time job. I really do. Like, I want to do this as my job. I love tabletop RPGs, and I don't mean like I want a job to where, I have fun at my job. No, I love software engineering. I love building tools, and this is a tool that I use all the time, and I want it to get better, and I want to be able to do this as a full-time profession outside of my existing software engineering profession. Like, I want to be able to do this so that I can truly give back to a community that I've honestly taken from for many, many years. I have played LARPs, and I have, enjoyed the company of my friends, and I want to be able to give something that is just kind of amazing. Um, but a true thank you goes to my family for, having the ability to see my passion for this and being able to, and honestly, sometimes playing Hero Quest with me at the table, because they love to see me be able to play, games, and I love to be able to play with them. Which, by the way, you can play Hero Quest on Questline. It's available. You just got to upload your own art. Sorry, I still follow copyright laws. I'm not about to steal people's stuff. Um, the the ability to play, anywhere from any device at any time, and honestly, your way, is more important. Play your game, enjoy your game, play with your friends. I recently sent out an email to some of the people that visited us at the Comic-Con in New Hampshire here. And it was a really interesting thing that I stumbled across in that I've always kind of told people, keep questing. It's always been kind of my slogan. I always thought it was kind of a little catchy and a little fun. Keep questing. And it stuck around, and, people have said, keep questing. And I think it's a great little 2-word tagline. But as I sent out an email, I had realized that there's a better way to say it. And it was your table, your story, your way. And that's what a VTT should be. It should be about your story, your table, your way. And it gets into, in the next stream that I do, I'll go into some of the game type editor features, which is really about your way, setting up your game and building your own game type without having to code or do anything like that. I think it is one of the more important features of underlying inside of how Questline works, is that it is the ability to design your own system from Questline. And when eventually I get my dice bag editor, which is kind of like how the dice mechanics work inside of Questline, once I have both of those two pieces fully complete, I think people will be able to build any system, any game, any way, and then honestly, people that, have interesting requests of like, I want to be able to do this. That's the kind of stuff that I get to work on and build in, functionality that makes all that happen, so that you can just use the tools right at your disposal to make, whatever system you're looking for. I think that's a really important part of this. I think that essentially the democracy of online virtual stuff has not been taken away, but I'll try to backtrack and explain a tiny bit. When the game tool Unity came out, they had a phrase that I actually really liked, and they called it was democratizing game development. And then Unity 3D came out. Sorry, not Unity. Unreal Engine came out, and now Godot and some of these other engines and stuff like that. I think that when they really stated that, it was a really, I think, important piece of the puzzle that really helped, creative people be creative and build their stuff without having to do the technical stuff. And that's kind of what I'm going for. Like, I want to kind of democratize, the ability for people to build their games in a way that doesn't require, hiring a coder and, maintaining the library, and like, you just go input some text and move your character sheet objects around, and there you go. There's your game. Like, you can play online. You don't need anybody else's help. I think that's a real true goal of mine, to really kind of reinstitute that ability. Just like if I sketched out a character sheet, here's how my character sheet looks. That looks cool. And let everybody else do the same thing with, a digital environment. The tool is just the table. I had a lot of people at the Comic-Con, kind of ask me that question, like, what is your goal? Like, how are you trying to do this? And I really, over the years, I've really kind of thought about it, and it is really just, I want the tool to be the table. I don't want it to be a complicated problem. I just want it to be a table that you can play on and you feel comfortable around. I think that's important. Any questions? I know this is my first stream and there's only a few people here, the people that have been here the whole time, and I appreciate you so much for hanging out with me and letting me talk for so long. And I'm sorry that I'm talking for so long. I'm sure it gets easier over time, but it's a lot to try to talk for 2 hours and really discuss things without having people have a lot of feedback. Let me see if I have any final things here. So to kind of wrap things up, my next, I will try to do another stream, the same time, same bat time, same bat channel next week. My hope is going forward that I can actually kind of accomplish this, and I can kind of make this a thing every Tuesday night, kind of talk about this, and then we can kind of get into some other things and talk about some of the game type editor, and talk about maybe even working together, with the community wants to build a one-shot together, and we can kind of work on some things. Obviously, I've had during the stream, Questline is available at questlinevtt.com. Please just go visit, sign up for a free account, play around, test things out. If you run into bugs, come to my Discord server, send me a message. I'll fix it. I'm very quick at fixing problems, critical problems. I will pretty much put down everything I'm doing to go fix critical problems. And the more that I get support from all of you, the more I can do this. It's not me begging. It's me just wanting to provide a better tool for you all. And I don't want to, cast aspersions across, other virtual tabletops. They all have their benefits in their own ways. I don't want to be in a war with other developers and their things. And perhaps they want to do the same, the reverse of that to me. That's just not the way I work. I just want to build a good, fun, cool tool. I would love to hear from people in, whether it's via chat or, in comments on the videos or in the Discord server. I'd love to hear people's feedback. What do you think? I do this during my games, and I guess I'll do it here because I think it's actually pretty important. What was your favorite part? What was your least favorite part? Tell me. Follow me on Discord and on Instagram and TikTok and all the social media outlets, Threads. Come find me, talk to me, tell me what you think. If you found this video, at some point, not during live stream, but later on, and you find it, come talk to me. Tell me what you're looking for, because I can promise you I can very likely build it and make it easier and make it better for you. It's a goal to always strive for, not for perfection, but for doing a little better than we did yesterday. So if you want to hear me go on about topics on other things, suggest topics to me. I would love to discuss them. If I would love to bring other guest streamers on and we can have a conversation about things that are related to Questline, or talk about TTRPGs that you might want to see, or TTRPGs that you play and like how you play them and like some of the interesting pieces of that. I think that could be a really fun way to engage in the community and really try to understand like more about it than, kind of my side view, as I call it, which is, I often am like knee deep in code, and I'm like, I have my head down and I work really hard on trying to build stuff, but I do want to be a part of a bigger community that really kind of supports each other and building, better tools for each other. Like I said, please come join my Discord. It's the best way to talk to me. I will always respond to people on there, and I love talking to people. And to recap kind of what we talked about today was, I went over the kind of the basics of the tool, how everything works, kind of like the overarching theme of how things are, and how to run a basic encounter, how to run, how to set up your game, how to set up a character, how to, kind of get into some of the really basic pieces of just running your first game. And I think that that's a great start to what I hope to be so much more. And if people are interested, we can even talk about things like, play by post games, which, Whiteheart is a big fan of. And it's honestly how Questline truly got started, because we wanted to play a play by post Star Wars 5th edition game, and Star Wars 5th edition had 0 virtual tabletop support at the time. And so I started building Questline so I could play Star Wars 5th edition, and we were playing it as a play by post game. And the more we played, the more I realized that the tools needed to be better to be able to play effectively and efficiently. And that's why you have such a robust chat system. And we'll go into the chat system a bit more in a future episode, in a future Questline Tavern episode. Let me see. Let me think about a little bit some of the other things here. Let's see. So, perhaps people can send me messages or, reply. If you've used Questline, what's your top 2 features that you love? Like what really like excites you about the program? What is one of your least favorite features? What can we do to make that better? Tell me. And I think that if you have an idea that you truly think will help your game, come find me and tell me. I will work on it. I'm not kidding. When you talk to some of the people in the community, I have literally heard people say things, and I have instantly started working on something that makes that for them, because I think it's cool, because I think it's interesting to be able to give people that kind of support and letting them play the game their way. So yeah, let's make that happen. If people have any questions, you can email me. You can find us at info@starleaflabs.com. Starleaf Labs LLC is the company that I have, and it is how I run Questline. The information is on the main website. You can find all our socials there. I'm sure you can probably find a couple more that aren't there. But it's typically at Questline VTT whatever. And we're always looking to make it better. I'm always looking to make new friends. I always want to sit at a new table. I always want to sit at a new table. That's what I meant to say. I love meeting new people, and I love, getting to know other people's games and seeing, imaginations, because I think the imagination is one of the strongest tools that humans have. And I want to inspire that in people. I want people to be able to build their worlds and keep their stuff. And if you run into problems, I'm happy to help. I'm sure other people in the Questline community will also help. But I think we will call that for the evening. I really, really appreciate people sitting around listening to me and letting me talk about something that I'm exceptionally passionate about. And I think I will leave with the words that I said just a little bit ago. Your table, your story, your way. Much love to everybody. Have a good night.